Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 sports video. And today we're going to be paying tribute to the top 10 Seattle Seahawks moments of all time. I know as a Patriot fan, you'd be thinking, Cutter, you are fucking nuts. Why would you do that? And is this because of the fact that the Seahawks beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl? Yeah and no. I mean, actually have a Seattle Seahawks buddy by the name of Jason Lindgren. Check him out on YouTube and his other projects and all that. Jason Lindgren got into my life kind of as a autistic gamer and all that, and he and I have been in touch for many years and all that. He lives in Washington State. I live in Ontario, of course, and Seahawks and Patriots, and it was revenge, and we talked to each other. Cuts us back over this, but yeah, I'm gonna do the top 10 Seattle players of all time in a future one, but I'm gonna do the top 10 Seattle Seahawks moments of all time. And yes, the Super Bowl win is up there. Against us is up there. Number 10 is the noise of CenturyLink Field. In 2013, the Seahawks actually set a Guinness World Record for loudest crowd noise during a game against the New Orleans Saints. I know it's not that game, which we will talk about, Beast Mode. But the fact of the matter is that Seattle was built for it. The roofs, the contours of the stadium, it was meant to keep the noise in and set decibel records and all that. Of course, it's close to Seattle's ballpark T-Mobile Field for the Mariners. But yeah, the Seahawks, they had the field noise. And the 12th man has always been there for Seattle and all that. So that's kind of amazing. Number 9 is winning your first playoff game, 1983. So the Seahawks started off life in 1976 as the expansion cousins to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Winning games when Tampa doesn't. But the weird thing is Tampa in 1979 went on to go to the NFC title game and Seattle had not. Seattle got to the playoffs in the 83-84 season and faced the Denver Broncos on home turf at the Kingdome when the Kingdome was a thing. And the Seahawks used their noise to their advantage, taking down the Broncos and taking down a young John Elway because this was his rookie campaign. Because he was drafted in 83 by the Colts, but he didn't want to go to Baltimore, so they traded him to Denver. So yeah, Seattle beat the Broncos on home turf and went on to the AFC title game, losing to the Raiders, who then would beat the Redskins for the championship. Number 8, Steve Largent and his franchise records. Steve Largent was the first Seattle player to have his number retired as player number 80. I know the fans get number 12 retired for them, but Largent was a legendary receiver from the University of Tulsa. I don't know where he went beforehand. I think he was in a few mini camps before Seattle because I don't think he started in 1976 in the NFL. But anyway, Steve Largent was pretty good, as both Jim Zorn and Dave Craig would throw touchdowns to him. He actually had the career records of receptions in the NFL at one point. He was an icon, and there was that one moment in 1987 in which, he got called for a penalty, and then the next play, Seattle threw an interception, and then Largent out of nowhere whacked the guy, forcing the ball loose, and Seattle recovered that. So it was just amazing what could happen. And yeah, Steve Largent is a legend. I mean, I don't dispute that. I think he's the best Seattle wide receiver of all time. Really, I do. Sorry, Jackson Smith and the Jimba. Number 7 is Matt Hasselbeck, 2004. Wow, in 2004 in the wild card. So the Seahawks went to the wild card game against the Green Bay Packers. What's even more crazy is that Seattle's head coach is Mike Holmgren, the guy who got Green Bay those 2 Super Bowl appearances in the 90s, winning in 1997 and losing in 1998. Anyhow, he was going back to Green Bay and all that in a sense. The game ended up tied, and then all of a sudden, there was a coin flip for overtime. Seattle called heads. They got the ball, and then Hasselbeck, after the referee says, Seattle's got the ball. We want the ball, and we're going to score. And the Fox people laughed, including Chris Collinsworth. Seattle had the ball first. Unfortunately, he threw a pick to Green Bay. I would say Al Harris, but to the Green Bay player, who scampered all the way untouched for 40 yards, touchdown, and the Packers won in overtime on the touchdown, and we're going to the next round. And Hasselbeck would have to take a massive L for that. So that is what happened and all that. Number 6 is the fake field goal in the 2014 NFC title game. So in 2015, the Seahawks were hosting Green Bay for the right to go to the Super Bowl. They had the first championship game of the day. Green Bay looked good. They were up by, I can't remember, I would say 20 points, but I'm wrong. 18 points. Green Bay was up by like 18 points on the Seahawks. It looked like Aaron Rodgers and the Packers were going to steal one in Seattle. However, Seattle came back with some key plays. John Ryan, punter from Saskatchewan, decided to throw a surprise touchdown pass to Gary Gilliam, as cats meow in the background, in the 2014 NFC title game. That fake punt got a touchdown, and then Seattle went all the way back, scored a touchdown to win the game and go to the Super Bowl against my Patriots and all that. Of course, I will not put the whole Malcolm Butler thing in the top 10 because that's bad enough. I mean, they went to the Super Bowl against the Pats. They had a chance to use Marshawn Lynch at the 1 yard line, bully his way in the end zone, and probably beat my Pats for the Super Bowl. But they went for a pass. Malcolm Butler intercepted it, and that was a massive mistake. Number 5 is Malcolm Smith's Super Bowl MVP performance in 2014. Malcolm Smith had a big job to do in Super Bowl 48. They were taking on Peyton and the Broncos, and then Malcolm Smith made a massive pick six, as in getting an interception for a touchdown. He recovered a fumble. He got the Super Bowl MVP award, and Seattle got their victory. So Malcolm Smith did fan-freaking-tastic. Number 4 is winning the Super Bowl against the Pats just past January. Seattle had a lot of things going for them. Well, they lost Russell Wilson to a few teams, and Seattle looked dead in the water. Without Russell Wilson, they're nothing. However, somehow Sam frickin' Darnold came out of nowhere and led Seattle to the NFC Championship. Darnold was supposed to do badly in San Francisco because he was hurt. Well, that didn't look like he was hurt. And then he went to the NFC title game, and it looked like Sam Darnold was not going to get Super Bowl because why the heck would he? So anyway, Sam Darnold became the first quarterback in his NFL draft class, which includes Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, to get to a Super Bowl. So they took on the Pats, who were huge with the defenses because they took out 3 tough defenses with their offense. So it looked like the Pats were supposed to take out the Seahawks for the second time in 11 years. Wrong again, Cutter. Super Bowl 60, Seattle beats New England. Pittsburgh, my butt. And of course, I was fuming over that because it was not even a close game. So I basically shake my head and like, what the heck am I doing wrong with my life? I don't know. It kind of had the diamond curse because my teams, like the Alouettes in the CFL, the Blue Jays in Major League Baseball, and of course the Pats in the NFL, would get to the final but choke. So anyway, yeah, the Kitchener Rangers, as of this taping, qualified for the Memorial Cup, Canada's World Junior thing, Canada's junior thing, and all that, and kind of broke the curse. Number 3 is Richard Sherman in 2014. So the Seahawks had the Legion of Boom defense. Everyone knew that. The defense looked pretty good, and then they had to take on San Francisco. I can't remember who the quarterback was, but anyway, yeah, it was Michael Crabtree, the wide receiver, against Richard Sherman, the defensive back for Seattle, and basically they were jawing at each other. However, Sherman got the last laugh by tipping the ball into a teammate's arms for an interception, and then Sherman on Fox, when Aaron Andrews was interviewing him, basically says, "Don't you talk about me this way. When you get a sorry ass guy like him guarding him, you know it's bad." And Sherman basically ranted about Crabtree, basically saying that Crabtree ran his mouth and Sherman got revenge for him. That's good. Actually, that is good. Number 2 is Beastquake, 2011. So the Saints were the defending Super Bowl champs, winning the Super Bowl in 2010 against the Colts. They would have to go into Seattle to take on the Seattle Supersonics. I knew I would say that. The Seattle Seahawks. What's even more crazy is that Seattle at 7-9 usually would never make the playoffs. Obviously, you're below 500, but because the AFC West was a shit show with St. Louis, Arizona, and San Francisco also sucking, and with the Seahawks beating the Rams on the final day of the season, the Seahawks got to win the division and got to host a game because the rules are the 4 division winners got to host a game. Of course, New Orleans would head into Seattle. Obviously, they would be hosting if the records were all that, but that's not true. So the Saints went into Seattle. It was a close game. And then, with under 2 minutes left, Marshawn Lynch made a legendary 67-yard touchdown run, making a couple of stiff arms. The biggest stiff arm was to Tracy Porter, who was the hero for the Saints to clinch the Super Bowl in 2010. He broke tackles, he crossed the line, Seattle won that game, and for some strange reason, it caused a literal earthquake in Seattle. Well, Seattle's close to a fault line, but yeah, that was amazing. Beastquake did his job and all that. At least he got a Super Bowl, and that's what we're talking about. Number 1 is Super Bowl 48, crushing the Denver Broncos' dreams. Now, Denver in the Super Bowl in history have always come out terribly on the wrong end for most of the year. 1978 Super Bowl 12, Craig Morton, who recently passed away, faced his former team Dallas, and Staubach beat him. But in 1987, after the drive happened when Denver took care of Cleveland, they went to the Super Bowl against the Giants. Did okay, but the Giants with Phil Simms was almost perfect passing the ball in accuracy. 1988, after Binders fumble, they got to the Super Bowl. They took on Washington and got butt whipped. They were up 10-0, but Washington scored 5 touchdowns in the second quarter and went on to win 42-10. It was kind of weird. It was like karmic retribution for them fucking up Cleveland, and then all of a sudden, poof, we're done. Well, that was what Denver did. And then in 1990, after beating Cleveland yet again in the AFC title game, they went to the Super Bowl and got ass whipped by the Niners 55-10. They won in 98 and 99, of course. This one's for John and all that. So Denver did not have much of a thing. There were 2-4 in the Super Bowl. The Sonics, I knew I would say that again. The Seahawks were 0-1, losing that controversial Super Bowl 40 in 2006. Obviously, I'm not going to put that in the top 10 because it's going to piss off a lot of Seahawks fans. And that's not my job. I wish it was my job, actually. But whatever. So anyway, the Seahawks would roll away. Of course, Sherman's interception worked out, and they would take on Denver. Peyton Manning was in Denver after Indianapolis just basically discarded him like a used Kleenex. And then all of a sudden, Peyton Manning just couldn't throw. Seattle's Legion of Boom defense screwed him over, a couple of pick sixes, and a kickoff return on the second half kickoff for a touchdown for the Seattle Seahawks. And they won the game 43-8. So Broncos got whipped by 35 points. Fortunately for them, that was not the worst Super Bowl blowout. That was San Fran Denver in 1990, 45 points. But yeah, Denver was involved in 3 of the 3 gigantic Super Bowl losses by point differential, and it actually broke a record they shared with Buffalo and Minnesota for most Super Bowl losses by a franchise. Well, now the Pats have that record. So you're welcome, Seattle, and you're welcome, Jason Lindgren. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.